Hey everyone, welcome to The Grind. We are starting a new series where we are studying the book of Mark, and that's going to be happening for the next 7 weeks. So.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi,
Sorry.
Mark. Yes. All right, and on that note, we're looking at basically Jesus being more than a miracle worker. He is beyond the miracles, because I think sometimes people just look at Jesus and be like, oh, look at all the good things he can do for me, but he's actually more than that. So, but let's talk about miracles for just a bit. If you could witness any one of Jesus' miracles, we're talking about the ones in the Bible, firsthand, which would it be and why?
Can I say his resurrection?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be the
That is a
most
miracle.
captivating event.
I think mine's more the less popular one. I think it would be cool to watch Jesus heal the guy who got his ear cut off by Peter.
Oh.
I'll be right there like a magnifying glass. Like, okay, I'm ready.
Oh,
Just curious.
so interesting thing that I learned in my Dead Sea Scrolls class. When Peter cut off the ear of that servant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's people might think it's just a random thing,
Mm-hmm.
but actually it was almost the theory is that it is intentional because in those days you can't have any defect whatsoever in terms of service in the temple, and so this guy was a servant of high priest, so basically he should he's set up for service and stuff like that. So the fact that Peter aimed for the ear made him basically physically have physical defects, so he can't serve in the temple. It's almost like a pointed attack.
Dang.
This was a theory. I was like, wow.
Okay, Peter.
I was like,
Calm
wow,
down, Peter.
You are a very bad person, Peter.
Peter's a
Oh
little
my
bit,
goodness.
impulsive and petty in it. Petty Peter. Anyways.
Peter, you may have dodged your legal troubles, but things will get much worse.
But that was just something interesting that I learned. But that was just a theory. Anyways. But yes, that will be
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of almost like Jesus redeems the servant back for his service, The miracle that, there's a joke how the greatest, everyone talks about the miracles, but no one talks about the greatest miracle that Jesus has is basically being a man in his 30s and having a close group, of friends. But jokes aside, I think one of the miracles it would be cool to see actually is the multiplication of food.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how do you make from 5 loaves and 2 fish and be like, the masses are fed. But I think one of the most fascinating ones for me has been the woman who struggles with bleeding for 12 years and then suddenly she got healed. I mean, obviously it's how did she know? How did she feel? It's almost like, how did Jesus know that that woman touched him in the masses? And it's like, who touched me? Who touched me?
You know when you know.
So that would have been very cool one to witness. Yeah, so basically with the Gospel of Mark, one of the first things the pastor had said, it's about how to fail in your walk with Jesus and still succeed. It's basically about failed discipleship, and basically a lot of the disciples have failed. They failed to see who the Messiah was, whereas some of the people who are not so close to Jesus figured out who Jesus was. So how can we learn from the failures of Peter, Mark, and the other disciples?
Yeah, well, I think Jesus loves people even if they fail, and he loves them by not rejecting them or getting really frustrated. For example, in Mark chapter 9, Jesus does not get frustrated even when the disciples argue about who's the greatest.
One of the few things, the ones I remember is when Mark goes, oh, I want to be a missionary. I want to be on ministry with Peter and what's his name, Barnabas. Yeah. And he goes, no, I'm not cut out for this. I think I think I related that on some level because I recall that there was a time that I really like to see my efforts. My efforts were the fruit of my efforts is what encouraged me to go on, to push forward. And I think there was one time where I, in an unhealthy manner, that I was gauging my faith based off what I was seeing of my success. For example, if I haven't prayed for healing, or I did not preach the gospel, or I did not study the word and get a revelation, if that didn't happen, then I'm gonna be oh, I'm so far away from God. Oh, I'm so poor. I'm so bad. Oh, poor me. Yeah. And I think that was the mistake I made, and I let my faith just take a dip whenever I don't see any like successful things happening. Yeah.
I also feel this way too. It's like when things are going smooth, you have this misconception of, oh, my faith must be really strong here. And then when things starting to crumble, and then you think, wow, I must have been sinning a lot, like, or I have no faith in this season or whatever.
I made a mistake. Oh no, Lord. Well, with like Peter and many of the other disciples, they have failed in so many ways. Like, you know, you might think like, oh, I wouldn't be like Peter. Like, I would never deny Jesus.
Defy gravity? No.
I would never doubt, you know, the fact that Jesus was, you know, rose from the dead. But then there's also been so many times where I'm like, man, I've definitely failed in my faith. And if I were to look back, like, man, I would not qualify myself for ministry or you know, like, if I'm supposed to be in this position, am I not supposed to have like greater faith, and so on and so forth. And I think it's also encouraging for me that, yes, I mean, I'm human. I don't want to use that as an excuse, but like, I'm going to definitely lapse in moments as well. But also it's encouraging to see like how like, yeah, God used people like Peter, who was super impulsive, you know, or people who had bad temper, like the Sons of Thunder. I mean, I guess they had the bad temper, which is why they called Sons of Thunder, to still do significant things. So one thing that Pastor Ed says, like, it's, you know, yes, you can fail, but it's normal. But what's not normal is if you give up. So it's like picking myself up again, like, okay, Lord, I repent, like, help me. How do I, you know, still continue on in my life, in my journey of faith without like, forget this, I'm done, you know, because I failed.
I feel like when things go hugely up and down, actually, I feel like you're closer to God that way. It is in the middle that's the most difficult part. Because in Revelation you talk about that's like the lukewarm Christians. It's you're neither hot or cold, and there's this like strong conviction of, oh, let's not be lukewarm. But I think recently for me, it's like Inception. The main character's wife was in a dream, and she's waiting for the train.
You're waiting for a train that'll take you far away. You know where you hope this train will take you, but you can't know for sure.
So Christianity nowadays for me, I feel like I'm waiting for this train. I know it's gonna come, but I don't know when. But just don't know when, and I'm kind of lost in this limbo. I don't know.
Wow.
If the present world is not really most important, and you're waiting for eternity. You're doing God's work. You're seeking His kingdom and righteousness first, and like somehow more or less like everything here doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. I was like, who would have thought?
Altar call, guys.
I wonder if Christopher Nolan had thought about this when he was writing Inception. I think for each and every one of us, you know, like how to keep going when we fall short, when we feel like a failure in our faith is, I think it's something that we need to, like, you know, just bear in mind. It's like to not throw in the towel and give up, which is, you know, the whole book of Mark is talking about that, failed discipleship, right? And the one thing that also focuses on is the death of Jesus. For like many people, it's like, oh, death, it's over, it's done, whatever, we're dead, done, whatever. But the death of Jesus is the high point. So the purpose of Jesus wasn't to perform miracles, but to ultimately die for us. How does this shift the way we view His ministry?
I think one thing I took note of is that not focusing much on the miracle side, it shows that He's not just a God who's trying to show off power, you know, that He's also trying to show us the depth of His love, you know. He goes the extra mile, you know. If you have like a grocery list, He doesn't just go to groceries and just buys what's on the list. He's gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna buy you like Linder chocolate because I know you really like it, you know. It's like the extra mile. And if I really say that, like, you know, Him doing this, not just focusing on miracles, but also like doing so much more, it contrasts Him with other gods that they just observe from afar.
It's more like, serve me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I just want your fealty, you know.
Yeah, well, I haven't been really viewing Jesus as a miracle machine or miracle ATM. So I wouldn't say it's a shift of his ministry, but I understand it as his main mission has always been to die on the cross and to be resurrected, to achieve our salvation and win over death. And all the other miracles is like a bonus side quest in an RPG game, and it's to to serve the people out of love.
So I think oftentimes people do see Jesus as a vending machine, like, oh, do this for me, do it for me. And then once you do that, then yes, like, I'll follow you. Oh, you didn't do this for me. Like, how can you? Like, are you really there? Why would you let this happen to me? That kind of thing, right? And the thing is, if we look at Mark chapter 16, verse 20, it says, and they went out and preached everywhere while the Lord worked with them and confirmed the message by accompanying signs. So miracles was never meant to confirm who Jesus is to confirm the message, is to accompany the message, is to direct people to basically, it's like, this is Jesus, check him out. It's not meant to say like, oh, because like, oh, this is it, therefore follow the miracles. So basically his miracles confirmed his message, and basically, but then the thing is, sometimes miracles become the message. So what are some dangers of focusing too much on miracles in our faith today?
I think this is a mistake that I kind of guilty to say I made also. Is that I think sometimes I tunnel vision so much that I actually crop God out of the whole decision making thing. Like, for example, sometimes I adamantly push to see signs and wonders, not to with the right intention for signs and wonders to just grow faith, right? But yeah, for me, like I said just now, that I wasn't doing it to help grow faith. I was doing it to gauge where I am with God. Like if I see it happen, oh, I'm in good terms with God, as you said. I'm being useful. I am contributing to the whole let heaven come kind of movement.
Yeah. I mean, I resonate with what Pastor has said, is we try to put God in such a small box, but actually he's creative and he's merciful, and we make Christians into social justice warriors. So we make the healing or the helping the poor, these are all important, but then we kind of put them more important than loving God and loving neighbors. And also sometimes we kind of conclude the lack of miracles to be a lack of faith, or maybe we're too sinful. But as Pastor had reminded us, God also heals people that has little faith, but he also heal.
Yeah, like I've definitely seen people who chase after the miracles more than Jesus himself. Like, there have been moments where people the speaker's coming, the speaker has seen all these miracles happen, so they kind of put that speaker on the pedestal, which is not right. And I don't think the speaker ever intends to be like, oh, put me on a pedestal, but it's just that people see worship what he can bring, right? And so they're like, oh, go here, his jacket touched this chair, or go there, we sense, and it just becomes all about what the person can do as opposed to what who Jesus is. And I think that becomes super dangerous, because then again, you're not trying to get to know who Jesus is, you're just trying to kind of get the benefits of Jesus. I think I'm just thinking about people I guess people in the know who have connections to high places, and they don't really care about the person, they just want to know what you can get, and just use them for their own benefit, right? And so I think there are many people these days that just use Jesus for what he can give, which is really sad, because Jesus desires a relationship, and sometimes we just treat him what can I get out of him, and then only then I'm done, then I come to you. If not, then it's okay, you can do your own thing. Yeah, I think people just equates Jesus equals miracles. That's it, which is not good. Let's talk a little bit about, why do you think Jesus was sometimes unable to perform miracles, and what role does our response to him play in experiencing his power?
I don't understand it, but it is what it is.
I thought it was like, I think the verse was like, did it use the word unable? Because I think it said he performed few miracles. I think he did pray for healing, and
Well,
there
verse
were some
5
healing.
says, and he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief.
Yeah, I like that part. He
Unbelief,
marveled like,
yeah.
wow, like you're pretty. No, I'm kidding. I think, I mean, like, yeah, I'd say like if I once had a friend who was like super vulgar, like, and all he talks about like drugs and partying, right? And then I think, and then he went over for studies, and then now I hear he's just talking about the gospel, right? And I think if I had a lot more doubt, I'd be like, him preaching the gospel? Are you sure that's the same person? I feel it'll be in that same manner. I think it's because the people knew who Jesus was that they were like, how can this guy be the Messiah? The son of a carpenter, how can he be the chosen one, right? And so yeah, I think that's why I always like to think of the story of Gideon, you know, that God asked him to do something, but he just needed like a slither of faith, and then God literally did the rest. You know, we cannot just do nothing and expect God to work. You know, we can't be like free riders. You know, and I also find it's a bit like ironic, a bit contradictory that, you know, they had unbelief. And then, so because of that unbelief, God cannot work miracles, and because he didn't work miracles, then even more unbelief, and it's just this infinite cycle that they don't break out of. Yeah.
Because, like, I think there's a difference between unbelief and disbelief. Because unbelief would be like, there's no chance that can happen. And then disbelief is like, I don't know if that can happen. And then belief is, yes, it can happen, right? So just imagine a scenario where, you know, you find yourself in, right? If you're with a group of people who's like, no chance that's gonna happen, it's gonna be really hard to, you know, cultivate anything there, right? Maybe there's then there's a space of like, oh, maybe it can happen. You can still have space to work, right? And then there's, yes, it can happen. Then, you know, of course, right? So I think Jesus marveled at their unbelief. Right? He marveled at two things. It was unbelief, and he marveled at people's belief, or faith, right? So I think it's like, in this scenario, it's like, well, he could do no mighty work there because they didn't see anything, they didn't believe anything. So it's like, well, what can you do, right? You can't really force your opinion. Like, you know, if you truly believe that,
The earth is flat.
The earth is flat. I mean, I can't do anything about that. I was like, okay, cool, you know, or like if we truly believe that Marvel is on the downhill, you know, I mean, like, so I'm just, you know, for some reason that came up to my mind. But yeah, so that's why I think, you know, that's why Jesus was unable to do anything in, you know, with amongst people who don't believe in anything that he could do. So hence the inability to perform any miracles there. And so, and even if he did miracles, right, sometimes miracles don't always lead to faith. If you read in Mark chapter 3 or Mark chapter 9, like it's, you can see the people's like, huh, what? And let me just actually.
Yeah. Or they get angry and want to kill
Yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. Like when he performed miracle, the Pharisees want to kill him. I think that was Mark 3, and then Mark 9. Let me double check what Mark 9 was. Should have this off. Yeah, so Mark 3 is when he performed for the Pharisees. They're like, nope, gonna kill you. And then when he heals the boy with the unclean spirit, they're like, why is this happening? How's this? And then what else? Yeah, and then the disciples like, why could we not cast out? And so yeah, so it doesn't always lead to faith, as we can see in the people. So how do we cultivate a faith that goes beyond what we can see? You know, I would say that if you are always depending on what you can see in order to have a relationship with someone, I think it's going to be a challenge to maintain that relationship, because if the person doesn't produce all the time, then that basically, if that correlates with your relationship, then your relationship isn't going to be very sturdy. So you want to get to know the person, right? Who they are, what they do, like their characteristics. So if you have faith in the person, if you have a relationship with the person, then maybe there's certain things that, you know, they do you may not understand, but you know them and you know their heart intent, and so therefore, like, you will have faith in their decisions, right? Like sometimes I may not necessarily understand like say growing up, I may not necessarily understand like, you know, all the decisions my parents made, but because I trust my parents, I know my parents, and I believe that, you know, everything they're doing is for the good of the family, so I can have faith in their decisions. And so maybe I may not understand, you know, why they do what they do, but I'll just have to have faith that they have the big picture in mind for the family.
I think along the lines of this question, because we're running alpha for the youth,
Right.
and they asked we had a fun question to come up, like, how do we know that Jesus was really teaching, was really who he said he was? And I think one of the things that came to mind was that it's actually consistency. I think it's like we said, like there's so many prophets who foretold about Jesus, and it's the consistency of all these things being proven that kind of validates who Jesus is. As we said, Jesus confirmed the message, and the miracles confirmed Jesus, right? And so I think in the same way that there is a if you choose to like completely ignore the miracles, you have to admit that there is a conviction of consistency that what Jesus is doing, and it shows the authenticity and truth of what he's doing. And I think that that could be another huge factor to provoke someone's faith to be like, there's something genuine here.
I mean, responding to if miracles doesn't always lead to faith, what does? It may sound cheesy, but I still think it's the prompting of the Holy Spirit. Like what man cannot do, God can. I really cannot like build up my own faith on my own, and also to recognize our repentance. So you have to be repenting and humble enough to actually trust in God. And we also should also remind ourselves that if we truly believe the Bible, then God is trustworthy. Then you just trust that he is in your life, just like how we take the transportation or we eat outside even though we haven't seen
How they
the
made it,
the
how they
maintenance
maintain it,
of the car or how they made it. And also like how you trust your friends or family. If you always check your partner's phone or you have CCTV tracking everybody to trust that they are not talking behind your back or betraying you, then perhaps that's not really trusting.
Like I said, right, if people depend on miracles to believe in Jesus, it's not going to be a very long-lasting relationship, and it's most important to cultivate a faith that goes beyond what we can see, right? Because God he's tangible but also not tangible. Like he's there but you also can't see him, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, what does it really mean to follow Jesus, not just as a miracle worker but as Lord? And you know, this is something to think about. It's like no amount of miracles can fully reveal who Jesus is without the cross and resurrection. We should be cautious about preaching the message and performing miracles without a greater focus on the call to take up the cross and follow Jesus. For Mark, this and not miracles is true discipleship.
I think one thing I can also take away is that like there's much more character and depth that God is glorious for besides his miracles. And I think signs and wonders really steals the spotlight because it goes against what is so normal for humans. So I think that signs and wonders tends to shadow a lot of other qualities that should also be recognized.
Well, to me, my takeaway is even when there are no miracles, I should still acknowledge that God's way is higher than mine. It's like that saying, like, give thanks all the time. Like even when it's not feeling good to give thanks.
The focus should always be on who Jesus is, what he has done on the cross, because if it wasn't for that, like all the miracles meant nothing. It's not validated. It's just a miracle, right? It's just a thing that Jesus did. But really, true discipleship is really picking up a cross. Like, what does it mean to really, persevere through persecution? I mean, we don't live in a society where it's illegal to be a Christian, where it's illegal to tell people about Jesus on the streets. And so I think how we live our lives and take up our cross is very different from people who live in a situation like so. But I think at the end of the day is true discipleship is to take up the cross and follow Jesus. So following Jesus for who he is, not for what he can provide. Yeah. And even in the midst of discouragement, even in the midst of disappointment, that we don't hold that against Jesus, but we still, you know what, Jesus, I am disappointed, I am sad, I am discouraged, but I'm still going to take up my cross and I'm still going to follow you. And that's the whole idea of like failed discipleship, right? It's failed discipleship, like, failing in life and, failing your faith to Jesus, but how do you still pick up your cross and carry on? And that's what we're going to explore over the next couple of weeks is how do we still follow Jesus? And to look at Jesus as beyond a person who is just beyond the God who is just performing miracles, because he's beyond a miracle worker. All right, well, it's going to be interesting next 7 weeks. We will catch you at our next grind. Bye.
Bye.